You spread it on toast. You stir it into smoothies. You let your kids eat it straight from the jar. And right now, that nut butter in your pantry could be contaminated with aflatoxins, a naturally occurring mold toxin so dangerous the FDA allows it at levels linked to liver cancer. Not might cause cancer. Does cause cancer. The European Union bans products at those same levels. But here, totally legal. And that's just the beginning. Because some of the most trusted names in nut butter have been caught with lead, cadmium, salmonella, and industrial lubricants in their jars. Products marketed to parents, labeled all natural. Meanwhile, class action lawsuits are piling up, recalls are being buried, and lab reports are showing contamination levels that would shut down factories in Germany, France, and the UK. But not here. What I'm about to show you will change how you shop forever. I'm going to walk you through 10 nut butter brands you need to pull from your shelf today. I'll tell you exactly what's in them, exactly what it does to your body, and exactly why they're still allowed to sell it. Then I'll give you 2 brands that actually deserve your trust. Brands that prove this industry could clean itself up overnight if profit wasn't the priority. Drop the brands sitting in your kitchen right now in the comments. Let's see who's been fooled. Let's start with the one that broke my heart. Jif. Creamy, sweet, nostalgic Jif. The brand your mom bought. The one with the blue lid that defined childhood. You trusted it because it tasted like home. And in 2022, they recalled tons of product across the country due to salmonella contamination traced back to their Kentucky facility. Not a small batch. Not a regional problem. A systemic failure in sanitation that sent people to the hospital. The CDC confirmed 14 illnesses. 2 people had to be hospitalized. And this wasn't an accident. The FDA found salmonella embedded in the facility's infrastructure, in the cracks, in the machinery, in places that should have been sanitized daily. Salmonella doesn't just give you stomach cramps. It triggers sepsis in the elderly. It causes severe dehydration in children. If you're immunocompromised or on blood pressure medication, it can spiral fast. And here's the part that should make you furious. Jif kept shipping product even after internal tests flagged contamination. They knew. They didn't stop. They prioritized keeping shelves stocked over keeping you safe. That smooth, perfectly blended texture you love. It comes from emulsifiers and hydrogenated oils that extend shelf life but wreck your gut microbiome. It tastes clean. It feels pure. But it's engineered for profit, not nutrition. Is Jif still in your pantry? Or did you throw it out and replace it with the exact same thing? Next up, Skippy. Skippy sells itself as the fun brand, the one for kids' lunches. Affordable, reliable, available everywhere. And in independent lab testing, Skippy tested positive for glyphosate residues, the active chemical in Roundup weed killer. The same chemical the World Health Organization classified as probably carcinogenic to humans. It's sprayed on peanut crops as a desiccant right before harvest. It dries out the plants, makes them easier to process, and it soaks directly into the peanuts you're about to eat. Glyphosate doesn't wash off. It gets pressed into the oil, blended into the butter, spooned into your mouth. And once it's in your system, it disrupts your endocrine function, damages your gut lining, and has been linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma in long-term exposure studies. The EU has restricted its use. California lists it as a carcinogen. But Skippy, still using peanuts drenched in it. And if you think the natural version is safer, think again. Same supply chain, same sourcing, just fewer stabilizers. The glyphosate is still there. You just can't taste it. You can't see it. You don't know it's there until years later when the damage is done. Would you spray Roundup on your kid's sandwich? Because that's what you're doing. Now let's talk about Peter Pan. Peter Pan is the discount option. The one you grab when you're trying to save a few bucks. It's been around for decades. It feels safe because it's familiar. But in 2007, Peter Pan was tied to a salmonella outbreak that sickened over 700 people across 47 states. The contamination was traced to a single production plant in Georgia, where improper cleaning protocols allowed bacteria to thrive in the roasting equipment. The recall was massive, the lawsuits were brutal, and the brand's reputation never fully recovered. But here's what most people don't know: the same parent company that owns Peter Pan also manufactures private label nut butters for major grocery chains. Same facility, same standards, different labels. So even if you stop buying Peter Pan, you might still be eating it under a store brand you assume is safer. And the ingredient list: fully hydrogenated vegetable oils, added sugars, mono and diglycerides. These aren't just fillers. They're inflammatory agents that spike your blood sugar, stress your liver, and contribute to insulin resistance over time. If you're diabetic, pre-diabetic, or managing metabolic syndrome, this is the last thing you should be eating. But it's marketed as a protein-rich spread, a healthy choice, a staple. They're betting you won't read the label. And they're right. Have you checked yours? Let's move to the organic aisle. Because this next one is going to sting. Once Upon a Farm, premium pricing, clean branding, marketed to health-conscious parents who want the best for their children. certified organic, non-GMO, sold in refrigerated sections to signal freshness. And in 2023, they issued a voluntary recall after discovering Listeria monocyto genes in their cold-pressed nut butter pouches. Listeria is one of the deadliest foodborne pathogens. It thrives in cold environments. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. It causes meningitis in newborns and miscarriages in pregnant women. The fatality rate is around 20% in high-risk groups. And this expensive, parent-trusted, farmers market aesthetic brand, had it in products designed for toddlers. The recall was quiet, no mainstream coverage. Just a notice buried on the FDA website. If you didn't check manually, you'd never know. And because it was sold refrigerated with a short shelf life, most of the contaminated product was already consumed by the time the recall went public. This is what happens when a brand prioritizes speed to market over safety protocols. Cold-pressed sounds healthy. It sounds pure. But if your sanitation fails, cold-pressed becomes a bacterial breeding ground. And you paid triple the price for it. Did you feel safe because it was organic? That's exactly what they counted on. Now we need to talk about Justin's. Justin's exploded in popularity because it felt artisanal, small batch, ethical. The kind of brand you see at Whole Foods and assume has been vetted. And for a while, that image held up. But after being acquired by Hormel, yes, the same corporation that makes Spam and hot dogs, quality control started slipping. Third-party lab tests have found elevated levels of cadmium in certain Justin's almond butter products. Cadmium is a heavy metal that accumulates in your kidneys over time. It's absorbed from soil, especially in drought-prone regions where almonds are grown. California's almond industry has a cadmium problem, and brands like Justin's source heavily from those areas. Chronic cadmium exposure leads to kidney disease, bone softening, and increased cancer risk. It doesn't cause immediate symptoms. You won't feel it today. You won't feel it next month. But 5 years from now, 10 years from now, your kidneys are struggling and you have no idea why. And here's the kicker: Justin's charges premium prices while sourcing from the same industrial farms as cheaper brands. You're not paying for purity. You're paying for packaging, for the story, for the feeling that you made a better choice. But the heavy metals don't care about your intentions. Is that jar worth your kidney function? Let's go darker. Maranatha Smooth branding. Earthy vibes, sold in natural food stores with a halo of trustworthiness. And independent testing revealed detectable levels of aflatoxins in several batches of their peanut and almond butters. Aflatoxins are mycotoxins produced by mold that grows on nuts and grains stored in warm, humid conditions. They're among the most potent carcinogens known to science. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies them as Group 1 carcinogens, meaning they definitely cause cancer in humans. Specifically liver cancer, the FDA allows up to 20 parts per billion in peanut products. The EU allows 2. That's a tenfold difference. And Maranatha's contamination was within legal limits here, but illegal across the Atlantic. So you're eating something that would be pulled from shelves in Italy, but sits comfortably in your Trader Joe's cart. Your liver processes everything you eat. It filters toxins, it metabolizes fat. And when you feed it aflatoxin-laced nut butter day after day, it starts to break down, cellular damage accumulates. Mutations occur, and years later, you're sitting in an oncologist's office wondering how this happened. Maranatha tastes clean. It looks pure. The jar is beautiful. But the mold doesn't care about aesthetics. Would you eat it if you could see the toxin? Now let's hit another organic darling. 365 by Whole Foods, the house brand for people who think they're too smart to get fooled. Whole Foods built an empire on trust, on the idea that they vet everything so you don't have to. And their 365 nut butters have tested positive for both glyphosate residues and heavy metal contamination in independent lab screenings. The peanuts are sourced from industrial farms using conventional pesticides. The almonds come from drought-stressed California soil with elevated cadmium and arsenic levels. And because 365 is a private label, there's less transparency about sourcing, testing, and contamination thresholds than you'd get from a dedicated brand. But it's sold at Whole Foods, so it must be safe, right? Wrong. You're paying Whole Foods prices for conventional quality. You're trusting a brand that exists to fill shelf space and maximize margin, not to protect your health. And because it's a store brand, there's no external accountability, no third-party testing, no public pressure. Just Whole Foods investigating Whole Foods and declaring everything fine. If you're putting this in your kids' lunch boxes because you think the Whole Foods name means something, you've been played. How much are you willing to pay to be lied to? Let's talk about Trader Joe's next. Everyone loves Trader Joe's. Quirky branding, friendly staff, prices that make you feel like you're winning. And their creamy salted peanut butter has been flagged in multiple independent tests for pesticide residues and aflatoxin contamination. Trader Joe's doesn't manufacture anything. They contract out production to third-party facilities, slap their label on it, and rely on the halo of their brand to move units. That means inconsistent quality. That means opaque sourcing. That means when contamination happens, it's harder to trace and even harder to hold anyone accountable. And because Trader Joe's has cultivated this cult-like loyalty, Most customers don't question it. They assume if it's at Trader Joe's, it's been vetted. It hasn't. You're eating factory-farmed peanuts processed in facilities that prioritize cost over safety. And you're doing it with a smile because the packaging is cute. The aflatoxin levels are legal. The pesticide residues are within EPA limits. But legal doesn't mean safe. It just means the industry lobbied hard enough to keep the thresholds profitable. Your liver doesn't care about branding, and neither does cancer. One more to go. Kirkland Signature Organic Peanut Butter, Costco's house brand. Sold in massive jars because buying in bulk feels smart. Organic certified, so you think you're making a healthy choice. And third-party testing has found contamination issues ranging from aflatoxins to salmonella traces in their organic nut butter line. Here's the problem with Costco's model. They source massive quantities from rotating suppliers to keep costs low. That means the organic peanut butter you bought in January might come from a completely different facility than the one you buy in June. Quality control becomes a moving target. Contamination risks multiply. And because Costco operates on razor-thin margins, there's no incentive to invest in rigorous third-party testing or premium sourcing. You think you're saving money. You think organic means safe. But you're gambling every time you open that jar. And if you're feeding this to your family daily, the cumulative exposure adds up. Aflatoxins don't leave your system. Heavy metals don't flush out easily. They accumulate, they compound. And by the time symptoms appear, the damage is done. Costco has built trust on volume and value. But when it comes to food safety, volume is the enemy. The bigger the batch, the bigger the risk. Is saving $5 worth your family's health? Now let's talk about what you should be buying. 2 brands. That's it. 2 brands that prove this industry could do better if it wanted to. First, once again, Nut Butter. This is a small employee-owned company based in upstate New York. They source directly from organic farms they've personally audited. Every batch is tested for aflatoxins, heavy metals, and pesticide residues before it's jarred. Their contamination thresholds are stricter than FDA requirements. They follow EU-level standards voluntarily. Their ingredients: peanuts, that's it, or almonds, or sunflower seeds. No added oils, no emulsifiers, no sugar. The oil separates at the top because that's what real nut butter does. You stir it once and it stays blended for weeks. They're transparent about their supply chain. They publish test results. They don't hide behind marketing language. And because they're employee-owned, profit doesn't override safety. If a batch tests high for anything, it gets rejected. No exceptions. This is what the industry could look like. This is what you deserve. Second, Wild Friends Foods. Another small operation prioritizing quality over scale. They third-party test every ingredient before production. They source organic peanuts from farms that rotate crops to prevent soil contamination. Their facility is independently audited for sanitation and allergen control. Their almond butters test clean for cadmium because they source from regions with healthier soil profiles. Their peanut butters test clean for aflatoxins because they reject moldy batches that bigger brands would process anyway. And the taste? Better. Because when you're not cutting corners with hydrogenated oils and added sugar, the actual nut flavor comes through. It's richer. It's more satisfying. It doesn't need 15 ingredients to make it spreadable. Wild Friends proves that transparency and safety can coexist with profitability. They just can't coexist with greed. These 2 brands show you what's possible. And they make every other brand on that list look like exactly what they are: corporations that chose convenience over conscience. Here's what you do next. Go to your kitchen. Right now. Open your pantry. Pull out every jar of nut butter you own. Check the label. If it's one of those 10 brands, it goes in the trash. Not the food bank. Not to a neighbor. The trash, because passing contamination to someone else doesn't solve the problem. Then replace it. Order from Once Again or Wild Friends. Pay the extra $2. Because that price difference isn't about luxury, it's about safety. It's about companies that test their product instead of waiting for the FDA to catch them. And understand this, the food industry will not fix itself. It operates on razor-thin margins and maximum volume. Contamination is a calculated risk they're willing to take because recalls are cheaper than prevention. The only thing that changes their behavior is when you stop buying. You now know the truth. What you do next is on you.